Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talking Over Making Comics. This is episode 3, Talking Style. So, in this episode, we're going to kind of catch up from where we were last time and bringing the line work into the final rendering. Earlier, we did the script to the page, so now we're going to see that come together in a final page. So, you may notice here that the video is kind of sped up a little bit. I figured I could make the videos like a little bit shorter. That way, you could still take in kind of what the video's about and it won't take up too much time. So yeah, this is going to be page 68 that I've been working on for the White Cell Re-Evolution book that's coming out. And the scene is set inside of a farmhouse, and they're having a discussion with Mr. Tanner here that you see, and the team is trying to find out what's the story behind this guy. They were sent to investigate who he is, and so that's what's going on in this scene here. So today, I think would be a good opportunity to kind of talk about techniques and approaches that I use going forward, and for you as an artist or an illustrator, how you can like sort of allow your own style to shine through, because I know a lot of people have questions about styles, and I think a lot of artists they're sometimes in a bit of a hurry to try to develop a style so they can stand out. But really, a style comes with time. It comes with the longer you're working, the more work you get done. Eventually, a style will some almost emerge on its own, because what's happening is as you're working, you're picking up little methods along the way. You're adopting other artists' techniques sometimes and trying to utilize them in a way that fits your own um, style. So as you go and as you work through drawing, often the style will just kind of emerge, and that's what I think people that are starting out should understand. I think it'll help them to where they don't stress so much about trying to develop a style, and instead they work towards improving the basics and getting down the foundation of good illustration, because not until you have a full understanding or a pretty solid understanding of art, in the sense that you need to know anatomy, you need to know perspective, you need to know all those sorts of things, the way that the human body looks in natural positions. So anatomy studies, stuff like that, all that's going to help you evolve as an artist, and through the evolution, I think that's when the style comes through. So for me, I would say when I marked the point of where I had a style starting to merge, it was a combination of transitioning from traditional over to digital, because I was using different tools, different equipment that forced me to kind of get outside my comfort zone. And when I did that, I had to kind of rediscover how I went about illustrating and also what would work in the traditional medium. So when I did that, that's when I found that you could you can get away with being a little bit more expressive. So that's how I took it, and I did, and I was so constrained and so um, well, I was taught through school, to create your art with clean line work, just like the professionals do, and that's how I worked for a really long time. And it was a great learning experience, and it was a great way to really understand the lines and how, to create your figures and all that kind of thing. But it wasn't until later that I realized that you can start breaking some of the rules once you have a good handle on them. And as an artist, we're all, continually growing and trying to be better. So there's so much still that I obviously I need to learn. But at the same time, I hit a point where I felt like now I can start to bend and stretch kind of the rules of what you're allowed to do. Uh, so once I've kind of embraced that mentality, then I started to really explore a different creative style. So I took inspiration from a lot of different artists, as many do, and again, that's a lot of where the style starts to grow. So I was inspired by, and I've said it before many times, but the artist Yoji Shinkawa from the Metal Gear Solid concept art, as well as Ashley Wood is a fantastic comic book artist. those guys inspired me to somewhat like shadow the way that they work. So I would look at their art and I would try to break down how they went about making it. So I'd spend a lot of time staring at it. I have a book here. It's the Metal Gear Solid Omnibus. It's like the big collection of the comics that Ashley Wood did the art for. And I almost like look at it as like a Bible kind of thing, where it's always on my desk. It's a big, thick book, and I flip through it a lot of times to get inspiration, but also in the early period of me starting comic books, it was a very liberating book to look at when you're trying to get yourself motivated and give yourself confidence to try to do things a little bit differently or try to do things a little bit more expressively. Because he is an artist, I recommend totally check out Ashley Wood. But he is an artist. You can look and see that he is very free in his art approach. But you can see also he has a really masterful like understanding of art and illustration. You could see through um, the expressive work, and under all that is a very solid understanding of anatomy, the human forms, and everything. So when I was looking through this book, it was kind of like I had a realization that as long as you're still working towards understanding the foundations of illustration and all the important things such as proportions, perspectives, being able to take a figure and draw them at any angle. Those are all things you need to work towards. But after I'd spending time working towards those things and feel like I got a handle on it, it is then that I kind of started to experiment a little bit more. And looking at Ashley Wood's work, though, was the thing that sort of pushed me past the point to where I started to produce work. Because prior to that, I was struggling to find my footing, struggling to try to find a visual style that I enjoyed working with, as well as enjoyed, seeing. So once I really dug into this artist, that's what kind of gave me the push to continue on. So with that, I would say every artist is going to have their own different inspirations. So if you're inspired and you're really into anime and manga and all that, you will find your artist there and your inspirations there. But for me personally, finding the Ashley Wood and the Yoshikawa is what really like motivated me to start one taking comics seriously, and two being a little bit more expressive, experimentative. Is that a word? And really try to develop something that was unique to me. So that all came with a lot of time, though. That came with working out the basics and then advancing beyond that. So then I get the question sometimes too. Is it okay to mimic another artist's style? I think sure, yeah, I think so. I think if you're using them as if you're using the art as sort of a step towards finding your own path of in style, I think it's fine. I think for me, that's what I was doing. I think I was really replicating a lot of what I was seeing that I enjoyed, and then there was definitely a point where I realized that I have to turn into a direction that is my own. I used to get a lot of compliments towards the work that would people would say, "Hey, it looks like the Metal Gear Solid stuff," and I loved hearing that because that was definitely the inspiration. But then I realized, there's going to be a point now where I have to start changing it and working towards making it more of my own. Because the last thing I would want to do is, be someone that just tries to replicate another artist's work. That's not what I want. What I want is to find myself through my interests and then, proceed in a way that it becomes my own. And that's what I'm trying to do moving forward. In my first series, White Cell Inoculation, at first glance, it's very recognizable. And there's definitely like it's comparable to the Metal Gear Solid work that you see Yoji Shinkawa do, and it gave me like a comfort level to work in. It gave me kind of like um, a path to the end of the book. So moving forward, though, when I took on my next project, the Big Man Down series that I did, I wanted to do something different stylistically, and I started to take more of an inspiration from other artists that I really find incredible. The artist Jock, he does fantastic work and does a lot of great work with black and white, and so I kind of took him as an inspiration and worked towards creating dynamic sort of black and white monochromatic scale artwork, and that's what I did with Big Man Down. So that was a different artistic kind of approach. And as I said before, when I do a new project, I like to try to like do it different um, stylistically. One, to separate the different projects that I do, and two, I like to try to explore different approaches with art, trying to kind of grow. Since this is still early in my time of making comics, I want to really, I guess, see what you can do, what kind of looks you can create, and also taking into account the type of story that you're working on, the type of book. And so this page here is from the current series that I'm going to be putting out. Again, I tried to do a different style here. So this it's very reminiscent of the look of the first book, Inoculation, but I did want to make sure that I took it into a different direction. I wanted to start to pull this my style into something more unique to me, and I'm happy working with it. I'm enjoying myself, which is I found is the key factor when working in comics. You really should be enjoying how you're doing it. If you find yourself fighting to um, sort of simulate a look that just doesn't feel right to you, then I would recommend that you explore different ways and different approaches, and find something that is really enjoyable to work in. Because once I began White Cell Inoculation in that art style, that's what took me to the end to finish the project. So as important as style is, I think it's also important to know that style will come with time, and don't worry so much about developing it as a focus. Just focus on the basics and take in inspiration around you, and that will eventually result in a sort of style that people can recognize that will be unique to you. Okay, so taking a look back at the art here, you can see that I'm starting to make my selections. Right now I'm selecting all of I think the characters. I'm going to work on the backgrounds um, and begin sort of the coloring phase, even though I'm not using colors, I'm using grayscale, monochromatics, and things like that. But it's to the same effect. In fact, a lot of artists, they do everything in the grayscale, and then they can go back and make changes through the hue and saturation menus, things like that. It's a way you can go about coloring. So there's so many different ways you can go about making comics digitally, and there's a lot of different videos out there on YouTube that are incredibly helpful when it comes to even just browsing to see different approaches that people take. It almost can give you a better understanding of how to use the softwares. Um, and that's something else that I wanted to talk about too, is that I know a lot of artists are leaning towards going digital, thinking about switching completely digitally. Now, I would tell you that working with the programs like Photoshop, it does take some practice. It does take time to learn the software. And for me personally, I was fortunate to have opportunities, like when I was in even high school, to take courses, and they were graphic design courses. And I will stand by the fact that I will always say, if you can take a course in graphic design and you're interested in making comic books, go for that. Take that class, because the things that they teach you in graphic design uh, is so valuable when it comes to producing, making your own comics, if that's what you want to do. So that is my introduction to the software, was through a graphic arts class that I take in I think my junior year of high school. And that's where they taught me just the fundamentals of using programs like Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator. It was later that I learned other programs in the Adobe Suite that were helpful, such as like InDesign, which is great for publishing and things like that. But I would highly recommend, if you have an opportunity to take those courses, go for it, because the skills that they teach you, like logo creation, branding, all that is very helpful when it comes to producing and making comics, let alone using the software itself. Illustrator is a great program. It's a vector-based program, so it's often used to make logos, things that need to be stretched in size so that they can, put on big signs or anything like that. When you're working in Photoshop, most of it is in it's rasterized, so it's all using pixels. And if you stretch it too big, or it'll start to distort. So there's a lot of different programs out there available, but if you're looking into going digitally, definitely take advantage of opportunities to learn the programs if you can find someone to help you, because they can be a bit intimidating at first. It's not all that difficult, but it's something that can be a little bit challenging to wrap your head around how it all works, understanding how the layers work, um, and things like that. So right now, using the selection tool to create knockout shadow effects, and this is something that I have practiced with in the past, and I have used a lot in this book, and I feel like it's been working great for the style. And sometimes I'll come back in and sort of blend with a maybe like a brush with a low opacity, or some sort of scratchy brush, and I sort of blend the shadow in to create more of a softer transition later on. You'll see. So there's so many ways to go about creating shadows and rendering digitally. Something that I want to focus on personally, something I want to improve upon, is creating very original and different looking people. It's easy when you're creating characters, and or just background characters or whatever, to kind of make them, they all start looking a little bit alike, or they're very similar. I mean, you can change the hair up, you can put them in different clothes, but that facial structure, how you make faces, sometimes it's not hard for you to fall into a rut where like all your faces start looking similar. So that's something that I'm really focusing on improving in the upcoming weeks. And usually, what I like to do is, I mentioned before, on Tuesdays, I like to take time to what I call like Tuesday training, where I'll go in and zero in on a subject, or some sort of weakness that I know that I need to deal with, and I'll try to pump out as many practice sheets as I can. I know last week I think I was working on female faces, which I know that's something that I want to improve on, and just kind of like going through basically like drills, like making yourself try to be consistent, but also exploring those weaknesses that you have. And so, yeah, definitely, I want to try to develop my range in creating interesting looking faces, which is a lot of fun, really. There are a lot of other places that I want to build up my strengths in, but I find myself drawn to the faces, and I really want to get a nice variety going so that the reader um, is more like pulled into the world, where it's a little bit more immersive, because people look so unique and individual as they do in real life. Keeping yourself disciplined and constantly trying to improve your craft, I think, is just such a vital part of growing as an artist. Obviously, you what I do is I go on like Instagram, and I have a lot of artists that I follow, and I'll see their work, and that'll inspire me. And then I'll see that they're working on their training and their practice sheets, and it's a great thing in the artist community to kind of like show that work that you do, and that's something that I'm trying to bring myself to do more, because it's great to see final work and all that, but it is also really helpful to see the process and see how other artists approach it, because that's that's what can enlighten you to, you know, make things maybe easier on yourself, or go down a different path that you wouldn't have thought to take until you've seen someone kind of do something very unique or interesting. And that's also what's going to make everybody's work, I feel, a bit better. Is seeing other people work out their kinks can possibly help you work yours out. And so that's something I want to continue to do. I want to put more of my work out there as far as like the progress, you know, work in progress pieces, or just sort of behind the scenes, because I think that there's a lot of value on there. I know I find value there. As much as you can see, or as much as you would find in a finished piece, you can find value in any kind of process. The sketches, the roughs, all that stuff is very helpful when it comes to growing and then also finding your own inspiration. So I'm closing in now on this page. You're seeing that I'm blending the shadows a little bit here. I've gotten all the background grayed out in the right shades, the right tones are in the right places. And I'll begin working out some sort of like detail work. I'll be going with some different brushes here, and then once I have established that I have the shadows and all that rendering complete, is when you'll see that I'll begin working the light treatments, where I play with lighting a little bit, I play with texture, and all that stuff I think helps to create kind of a nice visual. When you're working digitally, it's very easy for things to kind of look flat or look sort of mechanical. So I find by kind of utilizing maybe different textured brushes or unique sort of bristles, uh, that it'll help create more of like an organic look to the piece. It almost makes it look somewhat traditional. And I've had people comment on, I think, my Big Man Down series, because I've really strived hard in that series in particular to try to create that more ink brush kind of traditional style, because I still love the traditional look. And so to try to replicate that digitally, there's ways you can do it, but you need to kind of practice and experiment a little bit with all the different brushes that are out there. I went online and found some great source-free brushes that are available online. I think you could just Google Photoshop brushes, and it's one of the first open source, or basically free licensed brushes that you can use. And I had spent time just kind of doodling with them, practicing with them on a white blank piece and sheet, and seeing what they do, and kind of having kind of a mental um, image of like the kind of tricks you can pull off with them. And then once the right time presents itself, then you get that brush and see what you can do with it. And so I've got a few brushes that I really love to use. Um, and I think it's also, it kind of helps with the consistency of the book that you're working on. If you kind of stick with a set of brushes, use those throughout. There's nothing wrong with creating some variation here and there, especially if you're trying to create some effects or do something different. But yeah, find a nice set of brushes that you like to use, and just kind of experiment and see what they can do. I've got a brush that I really like to use for using for like trees. So if I'm making like bushes or brush, it works great. And it creates almost like a hybrid between very realistic, but also stays in line with the sort of style that I've created. So coming up here now, you'll see I'll begin the white lighting treatment that I usually do in all my books, and I really enjoy working with this sort of like scattered light, or almost like ray light, because I feel like it creates such a interesting sort of dynamic kind of look to it, where it draws the reader into the scene. I think a little bit. The way light works in reality is, it's so interesting to me how casting some light on a face, creating light particles, things like that, will bring so much life to the panel. So you see there, like in this upcoming shot, just by creating a little bit of that light, it brings it to life a bit. So it's something that I kind of stumbled upon that I really enjoy working with, and we'll see where I go with it. We'll see if I try to evolve with it, or if I omit it completely in future projects. Who knows? But it's something that I enjoy working on. So looking at the page now and looking back at the script for this page, I'm pretty happy with how the it came out, the results. Often it's pretty interesting how you envision the scene in your mind, and you go through the stages and the steps, and you get the final page done, and it's rare that it's exactly how you thought it would look, but it is always um, enjoyable to see it come together, and it's always something that can surprise you because truthfully, some of these scenes. Um, I wouldn't have been able to envision them until I started the process of drawing them out. I wouldn't have been able to predict that they would look this way, which is the interesting part of creating comics. So I hope you guys found this useful, and I hope that if you're looking at, beginning your own comic page from the start to finish, if you haven't just begun that stage yet, that maybe these videos will kind of help you sort of navigate your path towards getting the page complete. I always keep in mind too that there's always a time where when I have the pages kind of finished, I will come back. I'll look at all the pages, go over the scripts again, and make sure everything works. What's nice about working this digital way is that you can make those changes fairly quickly. If you need to make any adjustments, they can happen as long as you make sure you keep your layers to get separated, you label them, and all that kind of thing. So, okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. I will be putting up another episode. I think I'll be doing a poster for this series with all the characters on it. I think it'll be an interesting one to talk about. If you have any questions, I would love to answer some questions. You can comment on the video below. Subscribe to my videos so you can see when the next one pops up. And I hope you guys found this helpful or enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.